Okay, got a little friend joining us for this chapter, apparently, little Finn. Chapter 5, The Sneak. No, Finn. Ben and Pearl held their breath, waiting to see who or what would emerge from the hospital's front door. Ben stood as stiff as a starched collar. An imaginary clock ticked in his head. Pearl wasn't moving either, which, until that very moment, Ben didn't even think was possible. What would happen next? A man stepped to the front stoop. "What's Mr. Tabby doing here?" Pearl whispered. "I thought Tuesdays was his day off." Mr. Tabby was dressed in his usual work attire, a crisp white shirt, perfectly pressed black trousers, and polished shoes. A green striped vest completed the outfit. He always reminded Ben of a butler. His long red hair was pulled back into a ponytail, like Pearl's, only a lot tidier. As he strode down the gravel driveway, his gaze remained fixed upon the front gate. "He looks angry," Pearl said from the corner of her mouth. Mr. Tabby always looked grumpy, so his serious expressions didn't worry Ben. However, the ring of keys that dangled from Mr. Tabby's left hand had caught Ben's attention. Was he going to unlock the padlock and actually let the mulberries inside? Upon reaching the gate, Mr. Tabby turned his yellow gaze to Mrs. Mulberry. You hollered?" he said, his upper lip curling into a sneer. "Huh, what does a person have to do to get some help around here?" Mrs. Mulberry complained. "I have a very sick worm." "Is that so?" His red mustache was waxed into sections and twitched like cat's whiskers. Mrs. Mulberry held a box up to the gate. Mr. Tabby sniffed the air. "Oh, I detect the odor of an ordinary red compost worm." "Well, that's right," Mrs. Mulberry said. "I got a whole shipment of them, but this one is just not wiggling like the others." She clutched the box tightly, as if she never possessed anything more valuable in her entire life. She had been trying to get into the hospital all week, and this was finally her golden ticket. Ben wanted to ask about Dr. Wu. How sick was she? Was it serious? But that couldn't be discussed in front of the Mulberries. Mr. Tabby glanced at Pearl. "Do I also detect cinnamon, bubblegum?" Oops. Gum was not allowed in the hospital, so Pearl sped into a clump of weeds. "Well, I want to see Dr. Wu," Mrs. Mulberry demanded. Mr. Tabby carefully smoothed one of his mustache sections, and then very slowly he unlocked the padlock. "Wait, are you—" Ben couldn't believe it. "Are you going to let him in?" "Yay!" Victoria cheered as the gate swung open. She grabbed her wagon and started to pull it through, but Mr. Tabby blocked her with an outstretched hand. "I must first verify that the patient is indeed ill." Mrs. Mulberry's cheeks turned as red as her overalls. "You don't believe me?" "It is not a matter of belief, my dear woman. It is simply a matter of proof. Dr. Wu's days are quite busy, and it is my duty to make certain that she does not waste her time tending to a healthy worm." He tapped a long fingernail on the box. "If you would be so kind." And Mrs. Mulberry opened the box. Mr. Tabby reached into his vest pocket and removed a monocle, which he placed over his left eye. The thick lens magnified his strange moon-shaped iris. Ben and Pearl stepped closer to get a better look. The little worm lay on the bottom of the box. "Is it dead?" Pearl asked. "On the contrary," Mr. Tabby said. He plucked an ivy leaf from one of the vines that grew up the fence and shook it gently into the box. Drops of dew fell from the leaf and landed on the worm, and the little critter began to wiggle. Was it thirsty? Ben asked. Worms require moisture. They absorb it through their skin. If no moisture is provided, they dry up and die. Mr. Tabby removed his monocle, and then he set a few ivy leaves in the box and replaced the lid. The examination is concluded, he said. Good day. Good day? But I didn't get to meet Dr. Wu. Indeed, you did not. Mr. Tabby jangled his keys. Ben and Pearl smiled at each other. There had been no need to worry after all. Mr. Tabby would never let a terrible person like Mrs. Mulberry into the hospital. Mrs. Mulberry stomped her foot. But is a contrary word, madame, and I am in no mood for contrarians today. He grabbed the gate. If you would be so kind as to move your red wagon, I shall return to my duties. Mrs. Mulberry stuck out her chest. I have duties too. I am the president of the Welcome Wagon, and it is my duty to meet everyone who moves to Buttonville. She pointed to the words on her baseball cap. Welcome Wagon. As Mr. Tabby tapped his fingers on the key ring, a growl sounded in his throat. Ben could tell by the peevish look on his face that he was running out of patience. Our business is concluded. Ben didn't want to further annoy Mr. Tabby, but he really did want to talk about the sickness. After all, if he and Pearl were about to succumb to an imaginary world illness, he would like to know exactly what to expect. Mr. Tabby, can I ask you something? In private? I have no time today, Mr. Tabby replied. There are urgent matters to tend to. He attempted to close the gate, but the wagon was still in the way. Victoria's book lay in the wagon's bed. I'll help, Pearl said. Hey, Victoria, move your wagon. Victoria? Pearl's face suddenly went very pale, and she pointed behind Mr. Tabby. For Victoria Mulberry was at the other end of the driveway, heading straight toward the hospital's open front door. Chapter 6, Emergency Code Red.